Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you for listening, tuning in, like, subscribe, download, share with your friends, your coworkers, your mother-in-law. Tell everybody you know about the Startup Junkies podcast. My name is Talley. With my co-hosts Jeff Amarain and Grace Gill. How are y'all?
Great. Ready for March Madness.
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
Hope it's in our favor. And today we're excited to be joined by Amanda Earhart with PushKin. So Amanda is the co-founder of PushKin. She's an entrepreneur in residence at Cartwheel. She's a former Facebook and eBay product leader, and now she's here with us on the podcast. Welcome.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So tell us about PushKin.
All right. So where do we begin? For me, PushKin is a passion project. And as of last week, I'm now the CEO, which I'm super excited about.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's my company, my baby, and I'm excited to bring it to the world. So as anything goes, I started out in Silicon Valley as an engineer, software engineer, passionate about the online community that was really thriving at the time. And so bringing buyers and sellers together at eBay was my first endeavor. And then I transitioned over to Facebook, where it became friends and family and then everyone in between, right? So the core thread of all of that is bringing people together in online healthy environments. Now, we have a long way to go still. And so I won't say that all the work that I did at Facebook has paid all the dividends yet. There's still some magical people there. But for me, I was ready to take a step back and imagine what the next decade looked like. And to that end, got approached by magical humans over at Cartwheel Studio. So Joshua Stanley and Chris Coy, who had identified a very clear gap in supporting frontline workers. They are being left behind. There's 2.7 billion of them. And essentially they have to put their cell phones away when they show up at work, because it's a food safety hazard. It's your local Chick-fil-A folks. It's those folks that are in the medical industry. It's in the transportation and learning industry. They put their phones away. So they don't have access to online communication from the people that are really part of their everyday experience, right? It's helping them grow, helping them have a great experience at work. And so because of that understanding of the gap, we've built PushKin. PushKin's a device that sits on location. Imagine if you worked at a coffee shop making beautiful latte art. You show up and you log in for your shift, and right there you get a magical screen that tells you all the things you need to know about your day, including how important you are to the success of their business. It can be birthday celebrations, policy updates, COVID changes, or just, hey, here are the metrics and the goals we want to hit, and here's how you can help us get there. So that's where we're at. That's part of PushKin. We've been beta testing for the past 6 months at Chick-fil-A. And as many people know, that's one of the world-class places that care so much about their people. We built it with them in mind, and they won't let us take it away from them even if we try. So now we're being shared across their networks, and we are expanding into other fast food industries as well as transportation and learning. We're having a great time hanging out with Bill Locke in Springdale at his Admiral location, supporting him and his teammates. So yeah, I'd love to go deeper on whatever questions you all have or that inspires, but that's where we're at.
We need the origin story for you a little bit more, though. Okay. I mean, you talked a little bit about that, but talk about how you got connected as most recently with Cartwheel and all that, and kind of that whole journey. I think it'd be interesting, and a little bit about Cartwheel too, in terms of what a venture studio is and how they work.
Yeah, I love that because it was new for me too. So what? So when I stepped back and I said, hey, what does my next decade look like? For about 20 years, I had been building teams from 6 to 600. When I left Facebook, I had a global operations team, many layers of management. I'd been in the mentoring and the coaching role for so long, which I loved. But it was time to switch gears and go back into the learning mode, to focus on getting uncomfortable again. So to that end, I jumped into the University of Arkansas. I got my EMBA. And I took the entrepreneur track with Sarah Goforth, who, if y'all haven't met her, she's a magical person too.
Yeah.
But so through her program, she connected us with the wonderful folks here at Startup Junkie. I'd met Jeff through that program and pitched a bunch of startup ideas. One of those, which I won't name now, it was a great idea, and it may actually find roots within PushKin one day. But after I'd graduated, we decided, were we going to pursue that idea that we had started? And in doing so, thought about who in the community can support a startup, who can support innovators, who can support entrepreneurs that are local, and have that startup experience outside of the university environment. And you look to accelerators, you look to startup studios, and you look for just a mentorship group. And to that end, Sarah connected us to Cartwheel Studio. And what most people understand from an accelerator, as you all would know very, very well, is you bring in innovators who have great ideas and you support their journey. Whereas the model that Josh and Chris were going after and is becoming more prevalent is they incubate the idea in-house. So they themselves will go test ideas, multiple of them. And so they had about 10 ideas in their last sprint. And the way they get them is they go interview a bunch of frontline workers. They were B2B SaaS specifically. So in the frontline space, what are the challenges and problems? And they ran around for 6 months asking a ton of questions for key themes. They had 10 ideas. They built products for a handful of them because they have a development in-house, and they started beta testing. The ones that actually survived the beta test, where, like I said, Chick-fil-A wouldn't let them take it away from them, even if they tried, became full-fledged ideas that they looked for, entrepreneurial talent in the region that had missions and values that aligned, and bring them on board. So to that end, so Cartwheel Studio will retain, they'll be on the cap table, they'll stay with PushKin at least through the end of the year, and retain board seats and continue to support me in the areas that I'm not proficient and help me grow into those. And then they'll exit with our next round. So they'll exit, we may retain a board seat, but at that point we're off to the races, right? We'll be hiring up full staff to supplement, where they're exiting, and go from there.
And you came into Cartwheel as essentially an entrepreneur in residence.
That's right.
So sort of a CEO in waiting.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, we've got a pilot product that's sitting at Chick-fil-A right now. There's product market fit because they love it. But hey, Amanda, I want you to come aboard and see if there's a willingness to pay. So what's that next milestone? And are you the right person to help get it there? And so that was my charter for 3 months. Let's evolve the product to prove that there's a willingness to pay. Let's figure out what the go-to-market strategy, and all the things I learned in Sarah's class, doing more customer discovery, building out the business plan, actually building out the financials, building pitch decks, helping build a website, and doing all the initial scaffolding of a company. So I got to do all that in those 3 months. We were invited to one of Mark Hufford's Chick-fil-A regional meetings. He had 12 scheduled, but about 4 or 5 showed up because of COVID. And we were able to pitch the ideas to them and see if they were willing to be part of the program. And they did. They were. They all walked away saying, we're in. So I was excited by that. I'm like, okay, I guess that means I get to take this thing to the next level.
That's a pretty solid first customer, because any of us who have spent any time in the Chick-fil-A drive-thru realize that if Chick-fil-A was running the postal service,
oh my God,
they'd be making money every year rather than losing, billions of dollars. It's an amazing company with strong culture and very efficient. So it's
standard of efficiency.
Yeah, that's a great first customer.
Yeah, and that was more or less the brainchild of Josh and team at Cartwheel. They have a really good sense for, how do you start a product, start an idea based on a problem that is vetted and validated, and then who in that industry is the best first beta testers. So they're often running in some more interesting spaces that I can talk about in terms of NFT and blockchain and supporting that new ecosystem. So.
The magical pixie dust within Web 3.0.
Oh gosh, that's pixie dust. It's pixels. It's all the things that surprise a lot of old school tech folks.
Well, and I know it's interesting the way they talk about. We actually had a session in here last night and they talk about Web 1.0 was you could read stuff, right? Web 2.0 is you can read and write. Web 3.0 is you can read, write, and own. And the way they talk about it, it's just like you kind of disappear into the metaverse, and that's your alternate life. And for those of us that are baby boomers, we're kind of like. I don't think I can make the transition. I'm not up for the singularity yet.
Well, and actually, I think the original goal of Web 2.0 did include ownership.
Sure.
But the economics weren't obvious at the time.
Right.
And so it just kind of took its own path path to viability.
Yep.
And there was no one standing its way to say why this wasn't a good viable 2.0 solution. But now there's a lot of reasons why people are motivated for privacy and ownership of data.
Owning your own data, owning your own creations.
Owning your own creations and
creations.
taking it with you wherever you want.
Yeah.
That I think is inspiring, just this new wave of innovation, and I hope it takes hold because there'll be a lot of good stuff coming out.
And not to get too far off of this because it's interesting, but it strikes me that there's this concept of entropy, and actually it's kind of consistent with our logo, but this concept of entry where everything tends towards disorder and chaos. And the thing that's kind of analogous to that is we've gone through a number of different cycles where things go from being centralized to decentralized and then centralized again. Just think about it. Mainframes, and then you have PCs, and then PCs with servers, and then you have the sort of thin client stuff where everything's relying on the network. And now we're doing this whole thing where everything's decentralized in terms of ownership. But you wonder if the forces of concentration and efficiency end up stepping on some of that.
I totally think it's possible.
It's hard to say.
You're going to resist that. People will try to resist that, but there's natural economics.
The people with the market power are going to want to figure out how to own it all over again. Anyway.
It is fascinating.
But that'll have nothing to do with PushKin because you're going to dominate all the QSRs in the world. Right?
I mean, there is, we are customer first driven, and so obviously that's going to drive the roadmap for where we're headed. However, as an engineering nerd, which is my background, and me understanding where the space is headed, I am passionate to consider, hey, wouldn't Chick-fil-A as a corporate entity want to own their content, right? And so is there parallels to ownership even when you're building B2B SaaS software, right? And you're not doing it for one company, you're doing it for many. So we'll get into a Penn Station, Subways out of Nashville, Tennessee, or Bill Lockdown in Admiral. They may not be asking us because they aren't as aware of like this technology underpinnings, but we can start asking educated questions, be like, hey, would you like to own this? And therefore we, PushKin, don't, and we'll never try to monetize your data. Is there a value prop there that you're inspired by? Because it is their private internal communications. That's real for them and how they run their business. So rest assured, while there are parallels that we're considering in terms of infrastructure and long-term growth that may play into this.
One more, and I know I'm dominating all the airtime, but it's a fascinating subject. So as you think about improving the lives of those team members, the frontline team members. And I know that's always been a big thrust for the legacy roots of Rev Unit, where Josh and Chris came from, and it was all about improving employee experience and productivity. But having said that, is the big play there that you're going to be able to reduce churn? Is that one of it? It's like it's so hard to find them and keep them, but if it's more engaging and it's better environment, is the thought you'll keep them longer?
That's exactly right. So again, my roots is always been in management. I started managing as a 22-year-old software engineer who just happened to have social skills. So I've managed people older than me.
That's what you call a statistical outlier.
I am a statistical outlier to that degree, for sure. Not in other ways, but definitely in that way. And so I have learned that one of my superpowers is helping people grow. And to that end, I want to make sure that PushKin is there for these franchise owners who do care about their team members, right? They are not commodities, but they do have the real problem of for every week they onboard 2, they lose 5. And that's just crazy right now. They've got over 150% turnover. So they know throwing money at the problem is not the end all be all. They know that it's money, it's flexibility in the work schedules, but really at the end of the day, what keeps people there is the culture. Even if there's $1 more down the street. It's a path to growth and success. And PushKin is a communication tool that is aligned exactly to that. So the long-term vision is when you use PushKin, the communication that you are getting is one about how are you doing today? Here's what success looks like. And if you're ready for the next level, here's how to get there. And we're going to be on the back end providing really efficient ways of sparking those communications between franchisees, their teams, their executive teams, their leadership teams, and their people.
So it's as much talent development as it is day-to-day tactical management of tasks.
Because at the end of the day, that's retention. That's the ROI is retention. I will say that communication, when you get down to the brass tacks of it, improves so many business outcomes. And at Admiral, actually down the road, for them, it's more about efficiency in communication with safety and policy issues. So for them, they've saved over 15 hours a week because instead of having everyone mandatory on-site Thursday mornings at 7 to hear about a van liner insurance claim, like requirements, safety, make sure you're not, lifting boxes without your back brace on. And then they have to sign a piece of paper and fax that in to head to the van liner to prove they've done it. Now they just push that message through PushKin. And then they acknowledge it on the screen, and that's the key, is there's an acknowledge button where they get a printout on the back, they can send that to van liner. They're saving team hours,
You got an easy button, huh?
We have an easy button.
Too bad somebody else trademarked that.
I know. But the crazy part is, even with Chick-fil-A, when they have competing products, it's a crowded space. Communication, internal communication, it's a crowded space.
Sure.
I see that. I'm excited by it because what isn't happening is read receipts, understanding who's seen it and who's acknowledged it. So we went into a Chick-fil-A just the other day and was like, hey, are you interested in this product? And they're like, well, we're using Crew, we're using WhatsApp, and we're also using Homebase. I was like, cool, what are your read receipts across all the important messages? And it's either A, I don't know, or B, it's like probably 5 or 6% because Homebase does give them some read receipts. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna guarantee you 70%. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's try it. Yeah, we can guarantee a 70 to 80% read receipt on the most important things you wanna push through that channel. So I'll get off that soapbox, but I'm really excited about,
That's cool.
As an operator, that your frontline teams are seeing it, they're reading it, they're acknowledging it. So that's pretty cool.
Keep up to date on the latest news in economic development with the Arkansas Economic Development Commission's Arkansas Inc. newsletter. Each month, get the Arkansas Inc. newsletter, which spotlights the latest project wins and developments throughout the state, delivered to your email. The newsletter features major project announcements, company expansions and relocations, news articles, rankings, and more that highlight why Arkansas is a great state to do business. The newsletter is a snapshot of what AEDC has been working on and what we are following. The Quarterly Tech Trends newsletter highlights the latest news in Arkansas's growing tech sector. You can learn about new Arkansas tech companies, computer science and cybersecurity initiatives, funding and venture capital announcements, and even more. AEDC offers 4 quarterly newsletters: the Food and Beverage Industry Digest, Aerospace and Defense Beacon, Timber Trends, and Tech Trends. To learn more or sign up for a newsletter, visit arkansasedc.com/news.
Are you part of a team who does not physically meet often? Do you struggle through your workday and scheduled video meetings and online chats? Teamico's personalized virtual office software enables your team to have natural, seamless conversations and co-work side by side no matter where they are located. Bump into each other and just say hi, just like you would in a physical office. Sign up for free today at onteamico.com. That's TEEMYCO, Teamico, your office online. And so Chick-fil-A, Admiral, what are some other natural, next industries that PushKin can really dominate and just really plug in as efficiently as you would with like Chick-fil-A?
Yeah. So the market that we're going after is franchisors specifically, and the reason that's fascinating is there's over 785,000 franchises in the United States today.
Right.
It's a huge market. These are mom and pops who want to own a business for the first time, and then they're really successful at it. Maybe it's the Arby's down the street, maybe it's the Subway, pick your favorite. They're good at operating it, and then they can grow that to 20 more. So we actually have 2,000 new franchises opening up every month.
Wow.
Which is kind of bananas when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
But the proliferation is possible because they've been at it a while.
Yep.
And now one really great operator is able to scale and do 10 more.
It's a much lower risk way of getting into business.
It truly is.
For entrepreneurs. You remove all that product market fit because that's already established.
Exactly. You jump into the flywheel.
You got somebody else's cookbook, and if you follow their instructions and you do a good job with location, it's much lower risk.
It's a much lower risk. So we're tapping into the franchise industry. Now within that, there's many verticals, right? So there's QSR, which is 35%. That's quick service. And that's where we're going to spend a majority of our time proactively, right? That's the biggest bang for the buck. There's the most in there. We've already been testing at a Hyatt hotel in California, who's been hit hard on COVID. So the staffing is really low, and they're challenged to just get that back up and running. But lodging, and then we are having success at transportation and learning out with Admiral. Beyond that, there's fitness centers, so Mayweather Fit and of the like is a huge segment of the population that are interesting. There's also pet stores are franchising and proliferating.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's places, the things that you wouldn't expect to be really ripe for having a turnkey software package for their employees, which are not provided by franchisors. So if you think of Young Brands or Inspire or the Flynn Groups of the world, these are professional franchisors who support these mom and pop franchisees, and they give them these kits of how to operate, because Jeff, like you said, you get you up and running consistently.
Sure.
But where they don't lean in is in the relationship between the franchisee and the team member. They hold them accountable to building the right culture and growing the right business, and that's where we want to lean in and support all of those industries.
And you've started bottoms up, right? So you started with the franchise owners.
Owners, yes.
But at some point, there's going to be if there's enough of a groundswell, then the corporate owners are going to say, we need to mandate this everywhere.
That's right. So what I'm excited by is the fact that because we are consumer or customer first methodologies, we really want to know that it's working. You know it's working when a franchisee or the owner operator has it in their day-to-day and we're connecting with them. But from an operational efficiency, a sales and go-to-market strategy, we're going to need to hit close to, I think last time we checked was around 200,000 locations to really hit the milestones that we're excited about over the next 5 to 6 years. So to that end, we will be talking to the franchisor groups. We will be asking, who are your tastemakers within your industry group, right? Within your franchisee set who'd be willing to pilot with us.
Right.
Insofar as that goes, great. Let's talk about a deal to get 20, 30, hundreds of yours to adopt it. So it's definitely, I think, a multi-pronged strategy of who we're talking to at what point in our growth trajectory. Yeah. So.
Grace, jump in there. I know.
What you got?
I know it's like a ping pong match between Caleb and I sometimes. Please go right ahead.
I mean, I guess you mentioned kind of the industries that were hit really hard with COVID. How do you? Do you think PushKin will be really beneficial for all those frontline workers that are so fatigued from the past 2 years and kind of moving forward from that?
So what we have heard has been incredibly helpful. About that situation is you've got these workers that show up and yes, they are fatigued. What they haven't had is a really great way for them to ask for help, to raise their hand and signal where they need additional support. There's a generation of folks who are not willing to interrupt management. They're not willing to go up, take any concern and just what would be considered bothering to the management, especially when they feel like they're already a commodity. They don't feel like they have the right to. So what we've built into PushKin because of those moments is a raising hand feature. And at any point when they log in, they can raise a hand.
Like Zoom, right?
Like Zoom, exactly. And it will
interesting.
Text message the managers that are on staff. And keep in mind, in these industries, they could have 10 managers. They rotate so often, and so they may not even know which manager is there on shift with them that day. It'll text their manager that's on shift, and they'll go find them and have a sidebar conversation if that's what they would like. And to that end, we've heard some great stories where it's not the outgoing A types that they're worried about in terms of COVID. They seem to be self-managed and they figure it out or they quit or whatever, right? But it's the quiet ones that are amazing workers that are just not willing to really put themselves out there, who have found raising their hand through technology is familiar, and they're using those as channels to get feedback from management and support that they need to thrive. Yeah, so that's one of the ways that we feel like it'll be helpful. But yeah, the COVID issues are real, but especially in QSR, the business is booming because it's low touch service. Yeah. And so they actually need us more than ever to help them with efficiency and communication. So yeah.
Very cool.
You mentioned there earlier about just kind of your role in mentoring previously, and what mentors have you had in your life that you can point to that's kind of informed your journey, and how are you relaying that now to potentially new mentees? I
feel like I've been incredibly blessed to have bumped into humans who were willing to reach out and lift me up in times where I, wasn't willing to lift myself up. And so there's folks from my past eBay days and from the Facebook days that I've mentioned in other scenarios, but Ellen Silver was one of my manager's mentors that I bumped into at eBay and took me through Facebook. One of the things she was always really passionate about for me personally is get out of your comfort zone. When she saw me comfortable, she would challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's next for you? What have you not done next? Because it's time for you to stay engaged. So that I pass on to folks that I see getting too comfortable, because I do think that's powerful. And then Annette Revis, who is one of my mentors and HR advisors, she would find moments where I would second guess myself, and she would always push in and say, second guessing is great for a moment when you need to reset and canvas how you're feeling about a certain moment, and then make a hard decision about why you're feeling that way and move. And don't let it be something that you dwell on and you have, second guesses about. So when I see folks around me who are dwelling too much on something they're uncomfortable about, I push on them to make that decision and get moving. Those would be two, but locally, honestly, like Sarah Goforth is a rock. She is someone who is so eloquent and so optimistic and so human first that I would send anyone to her for thinking through the real of product market fit, of business analytics, and of just connecting people in this region to others who are willing to help each other. Yeah. Jeff's pretty great too, but he's here, so I can't really talk to him.
Today's Sarah's birthday too. Happy birthday, Sarah.
Oh, that's
is
right. It is.
That's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Getting back to the capitalistic side of things here, so this is a venture scale company. You're going to get on that venture treadmill. I take it. What's the outlook for doing a raise? Talk a little bit about that. And this is not a public solicitation for funding. It's just a conversation about what's coming.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. So we are in due diligence in our current pre-seed raise. We're targeting $500,000 raise for 15% equity. Atento is leaning in as a majority stakeholder. So we're in due diligence with them and excited to be headed out to Tulsa next week, actually, and learn about their team more intimately, and also the city, which has an amazing talent pool.
Yep.
And we're only 2 hours away.
That's right.
And so how do we tap into that and build some really great bridges with them in the region? So Attento's been great. And then there's an angel network around here that is just fabulous, and they're also helping to organize that on our behalf. We've been thinking about WeFunder and all the great innovations in that space as well. But so this 500K is going to really get us up and running, but that'll get us about 12 to 18 months. So we'll be looking at another $1 to $3 million raise later in the year. So we're going to switch gears between now and then. But that's the plan, and we'll probably do another raise, in 1 or 2 years after that, maybe another A.
So pre-seed, seed, and then maybe a big
an
A as you go.
Maybe a B.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the end,
maybe you don't need to, right?
Maybe we don't need to,
Yeah.
right? We're hoping that we can build so much traction that the incoming revenue will help support the growth that we're looking to achieve. So I'm excited. It's the beginning of a really fun path that I'm excited to explore.
The most important thing you have to do is have pairs of running shoes that you can swap out regularly, because you're going to be running hard, right?
I've sensed that already. I mean, I'm in this interesting moment where I'm not only, because you're the CEO, you're fundraising. Like, that's your job.
Yeah.
You're chief fundraising officer.
That'll be half your time.
Yep,
probably.
and then you're chief sales officer.
Yep.
And so I'm getting to play both of those roles. And I love that we have an amazing CTO that he's a co-founder CTO, Ryan Meyer, who just came on board. So he's really harnessing the technology reins and running with that. So, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
Very exciting.
But yes, running shoes. And I'm not a sneaker geek, but my son is, and thank goodness he's 13 and I can now wear his shoes. So yeah, we're good on that.
So we don't talk about this much on the podcast because nobody knows the back end of this, but when we schedule a podcast guest, you fill out some questions whenever, and one of the interesting facts that you plugged in about yourself was that you were a prepper.
Oh boy. Yes.
So I'm just curious about that. Tell us a little bit about
This
that
is
side.
the 60 Minutes question, right?
Amazing. it's not like
You have a bunker.
it's not like it's not like the Naked and what is that show called?
Naked and Afraid. Yeah.
It's not like Naked and Afraid Peoples. It's like, so, I mean, I am a hippie from Santa Cruz at the end of the day, right? And so we would forage and we'd be in these beautiful redwoods with fern plants. And I was like, what can I do with the fern plant? Did you know you can eat the roots of a fern plant? So anyhow, I ended up, partnering up with my husband, who is on the other side of the track, where he is a doomsdayer. He's like, things are going sideways. I am going to know all the things about all the things technical.
Yeah.
Can you take all the things that are natural? And so essentially, I'm on the side where I understand all the edibles, the medicinals, and understand that at the end of the day, for both of us, if things went sideways, actually the most dangerous thing are humans. And so you need to get away from people for a while, which is kind of crazy to think about. And so when you do that, then you have to really sustain yourselves in an atmosphere where you're stealth. And so anyways, I would soapbox on this with anyone who wants to all day, but I know these things about Arkansas in terms of the edibles, medicinals, and about California, and he knows all the things technical about. We've got bug out vehicles like motorcycles that are 2-seaters for each of our kids. We've got our bug out bags. I just ate an MRE the other day. They're disgusting.
They are.
But I'm sure if I'm starving.
But they're better than Vietnam era sea rats. I can assure you that. Yes.
But you know what? The Vietnam sea rats, they actually, if barbecued, might be great. You never know, right?
After 5 or 10 years, it's not so much.
Beef jerky, oh gosh. But yeah.
Smoke them.
Smoke them, yeah, smoke them. Yeah, but anyways, it's
totally apropos given what's going on in the world.
Well,
a lot of us who grew up in the duck and cover, Cold War time are thinking it's not a bad idea to be prepared.
It's not. And if you can make it a hobby, then it makes it less daunting, because there's so much to know. And actually the one trick I'd give you all is these Army surplus stores. They are a gem of a place you can go, because they have things that, like these blankets that are so thin and they cost $2, and you can stuff them in a bag, but when you wrap them around you, they are the warmest thing you'll ever experience. And I know there's some great places in downtown Bentonville that sells you these amazing sleeping bags that also stuff, but you don't have to go that route if you
Sunny
don't.
Surplus, Mountain Man.
Yeah, so it's a fun hobby. I absolutely will geek out with anyone who wants to go deep on that for over coffee or.
That's
I
very
just
Other
thought that was very
libations.
interesting, and I like the fact that y'all kind of cover both areas of that.
Yeah.
It's nice. Teamwork makes the dream work.
There you go. I agree.
Time to land the plane.
Sure. So the final question, I guess, or second to last question that we asked our guest was, if you were able to go back in time, and visit with your younger self, with all the experience, knowledge that you have now, what advice might you give yourself?
You know what, I would just say hold on for the ride, honestly. Because I don't believe in looking back too often, honestly, because I feel like hindsight's 20/20. And I was just telling folks before this, your brain will embellish what might have been if you didn't take that journey. And so you need to live in the moment. You need to live for what you wake up for every day and enjoy. And you don't know where you're headed, but you can create a line of sight for what you enjoy doing and what kind of impact you want to have. Set those broad expectations for yourself and broad expectations for your team and your mission, and then walk a path that gets you to that, allowing for meandering along the way. So for me, it's hold on. There's still such a long journey ahead. If you'd told my... Actually, I don't know if y'all did time capsules when you were kiddos, but I did, and when I opened it, I was like, I aspired to have a white VW Bug, and I was going to be a waitress at a beach bungalow. That's what I wrote down. And I'm sure there was some movie that I saw that I was so enamored by, and that was who I wanted to be. And this is absolutely not where I ended up. But I do have a VW Bug at home, so that's kind of fun.
Hey, you got the important part, right?
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Where can our listeners and viewers on a worldwide basis, we get 100,000 downloads plus in over 100 countries, so it's a big audience. These are all potential PushKin customers. Where can they find out more about PushKin and yourself?
I'm going to put out there something crazy. It's my phone number.
Uh-oh.
831-419-4620. I challenge you to blow me up. I find that in the industry I'm at, they are voice first, they are phone first folks, and I appreciate that. I love hearing from folks directly on what they need. But if you are technically more apt to reach out via the interwebs, then you can do, our website is trypushkinapp.com, or you can reach me at amanda@cartwheel.studio, and I'm excited to reach out and talk to you all as soon as you want.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming on.
Thank
It's
you
great
for
having you on.
me.
Yeah, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, very good.
Ecosystem builders, entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce, mayors. If you're interested in taking your economic future into your own hands, we've got a book that can help you. Creating Startup Junkies, Building Sustainable Venture Ecosystems in Unexpected Places is the guide. It's a little bit inspiration. It's a little bit toolkit. What it will allow you to do is take your economic future into your own hands and build a sustainable small business, innovation, and entrepreneurial ecosystem in your backyard. If you'd like to hear more, check out creatingstartupjunkies.com. The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.